honor to have you here attending this conference. This is a timely conversation, I believe, as we look to solving pressing issues in African agriculture. In Kenya, smallholder farmers represent a significant portion of our agricultural sector. However, they face barriers to scaling up, accessing inputs, and participating in value chain added markets. Contract farming, when thoughtfully structured, presents a powerful solution, and therefore, the theme for the conference this year is Revitalizing African Agriculture, Time for Bold Action. This conference is about opportunities, as well as addressing the day-to-day challenges that stakeholders face in the agricultural value chain. Over the next 2 days, we will hear from diverse groups of experts, industry leaders, thought-provoking speakers on contract farming models in both agriculture and livestock value chains, innovative solutions for sustainable farming, seed technology, fertilizer use and soil health, the role of intermediaries, policy support for contract farming, the legal aspects, and financing solutions. 2 things have motivated me to organize this event. One is my background as I was growing up. I was fortunate to have been surrounded by farming. As a young girl, I watched my mother grow a variety of crops: cabbages, sukuma wiki, carrots, coffee, and maize, amongst others. We used to take them to the market to sell. It was a bustling hub. Farmers from the community came together to market their produce. I remember vividly how, despite the hard work which we were doing, we were the actual people who were farming, by the end of the day, we often found ourselves with surplus produce that we had to sell at throwaway prices, just to avoid incurring the cost of transporting the unsold stock back home. This made me begin to understand just how unpredictable farming could be and how fragile the livelihoods of farmers were. Then, during COVID-19 2020, I decided to diversify and went into value addition, but soon realized that value addition process could not succeed without a reliable supply of raw materials and traceability. Secondly, as an events management professional with over 14 years in events industry, I have seen firsthand how platforms like this can create meaningful dialogue and provide solutions. This success in any business, including farming, comes from sharing knowledge and learning from others, which we are here to do today. It is in line with this that Sunflower Events partnered with various organizations, namely Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kerio Valley Development Authority, Kenya National Farmers Federation, Organic Fertilizer and Input Manufacturers Association of Kenya, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and Agriculture Sector Network, with a shared vision to play a part in bringing key stakeholders together to discuss and share knowledge on contract farming. It is always important to farm with a plan, I believe. It is not enough to simply plant a crop, whatever it is, without knowing where it will end up. Farmers should know beforehand what to grow and where to sell. This is why contract farming is so important, as it provides the framework of certainty and sustainability. But it's not just about the traditional farmer. I believe that we can extend the benefits of contract farming to those who may not be farmers right now themselves, but they own a piece of land. There are many people in this country and across Africa with acres of land lying idle that could be utilized to contribute to our food security. If you own land and you're here, think about how you can farm it. With contract farming, you don't need to be an expert in farming. You only need the right solutions and the right partners. It therefore gives me great joy to be part of this important gathering, where we have the opportunity to not only share our experiences, but also discuss possible solutions to the pressing issues that face our farmers and the agricultural value chains today. In conclusion, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, mine is a call for partnership and innovation in contract farming to build a pathway towards sustainable, productive, and inclusive agricultural systems. In Kenya, it has shown success in some sectors from tea to horticulture by linking smallholder farmers to global markets and improving livelihoods. Let us remember that contracting farming true potential lies in collaboration between companies, governments, financial institutions, and farmers, which can transform agriculture, empower farmers, and unlock economic potential for the continent and the future of sustainable agriculture. Thank you.
Storage and cold chains poses a major challenge in agriculture output. In East Africa, over 40% of our fresh produce is lost between harvest and market due to inadequate logistics. This issue severely limits the effectiveness of contract farming arrangements as products must reach markets fresh and on time. And so what we're seeing with some of the companies and what we're encouraging them is that where the infrastructure has not improved, even as we continue to work with government to improve infrastructure all around, and even where there is no cold chains and the produce needs that they can go to where the farmers are and pick the produce from there so that it reduces this loss. Knowledge gaps and training needs. While contract farming provides structured support, knowledge gaps persist. Many farmers need training on crop management, best practices, and efficient resource use, even of pesticides and fertilizers. And I think that's a whole topic that I hope will be covered in this conference on good use of the right pesticides, the right fertilizers, because we see the effect it is having on our own health as Kenyans and as humans globally. This issue severely affects the effectiveness of contract farming arrangements as products must reach markets fresh and on time, but on the right condition. There are different rules. For those who are working with EU and others, we know the different rules in terms of pesticides, in terms of freshness, on what it has to be, and what businesses that are in this area of contract farming have taken a role that for a long time was handled by government through agriculture extension officers. And I'm hoping that government is starting to relook at that because it's not just for the contract farmers. So the contract farmers, many of them, we've seen that those who are contracting them are offering um, that solution in many times because there's a gap. But generally, would like to see government going back to where farmers can be able to get this. And so, as I close, let me address government who we work very closely with, and I didn't introduce KEPSA as we began. Hopefully, you can look us up for those who do not know us. But we work very closely with government, and they are our partner and our key partner in development and in terms of policy. But one of the things as business steps up to provide financing for the small scale farmers in contract farming, that we hope that government also can provide financial incentives and access to credit so that we can support many more contract farmers by expanding access to affordable financing through agricultural banks and microfinance institutions. And all we need for these institutions is the right incentives so that they can give credit to these farmers. The second thing for government is investing in infrastructural development, as I've mentioned. If we do not have the right rules, I think for many of us who are Kenyans and have been around for a long time, a good example of a rich area that has had issues for a long time is places like Nyandarua, where we would see people pouring milk, cabbages going bad, tomatoes, and all that. And that's something that we hope as government looks at and maps our agriculture areas, that those become the priorities where the roads, the transportation, is right and it's affordable so that where companies that are doing contracting are not able to go and pick the produce, that the farmers can get it to where it needs to be. But even for the companies, sometimes the roads are impassable, even if you have great trucks to be able to go and pick that produce. So we really, really need our infrastructure down. Establishing supportive policies and regulatory frameworks. Sometimes I listen to some of our businesses when they speak, and And this is a challenge. And when I talk about government, I'm not just talking about the national government. I'm talking about government in general with the counties. So you see, a produce is leaving Naivasha and getting to Nairobi, and this is flowers or fresh produce. And because of the need for levies and fees are along the road, they open sometimes this cold storage. So by the time it's getting to Nairobi and to the airport and getting to the market, it's of lower quality. And this is why it's important for us to work together with all governments, even including the county governments, to say how do we handle that the produce is not messed up along the way, or the levies that are charged again that affect the price at the end of the day. So that as long as you're passing one county, if you pass about 5 counties, it's like you pass 5 countries. And so you have all these new levies and charges that are added on. So by the end of the day, what the farmer now gets back, by the time the logistics companies and the contractors get their money, the farmer gets so little at the end. And this is where harmonization of the policies and regulatory framework is important. Then again, let me emphasize on the training and capacity building. The private sector is doing its best. It's filling that gap where it can, but we cannot do it all. And we need government to be able to go back and say, can we get agricultural extension officers helping out the small farmers and all the farmers in the country? And so, ladies and gentlemen, contract farming holds immense potential to transform Africa agriculture. It's a model to uplift small holder farmers, to boost our productivity, to reduce poverty, and drive sustainable growth. And so I would really ask us to embrace it, market it, and thank you, Paris, for putting this together. And we hope that it's something that we'll continue to have long conversations, but again, acting on those conversations so that they don't remain conversations in a conference room. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Another round of applause for Carol. Thank you so much for pointing out not only the benefits of contract farming, but also the challenges. Where are the pain points? Yeah. And that is why a conference like this is so critical, because it brings us around the table, whether it is government or the stakeholders on the value chain. We are here to come together, to learn, to share, and to start making things better. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Collins Marangu from the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock. He brings a wealth of experience, having held various roles within the ministry, including significant work managing migratory and invasive pests and weeds as the Director, Plant Protection and Food Safety. Karibu sana, Mr. Marangu.
Good morning. Habari zenu. For that, as you have heard, I'm Collins Marango, but I'm here representing my cabinet secretary, Dr. Kalanja. By the way, he had packed to come here, but was caught by his boss. Those of us who are from Kenya, sometimes things work. I don't know what they went to discuss, but they told me, just get these things, go and represent me. As my colleague has said it right, the KEPSA CEO. There are a few things I want to state before I read the speech, because when I read it, I will not say much. First of all, Paris, this is something which everybody wished happened yesterday, bringing us together to discuss this contract farming. From where I sit, this is one thing which can transform the farming community in this country. Because there's nothing bad like You are planting something, you don't know you are taking it. You don't even know what is required. But I can assure you, things will never be the same again. We are moving forward together, and I can assure you get maximum support from our side. Because I know it is not in the speech, there's something Kepsad put very right. And I have just asked Carlo if this is true. Because in several meetings where we were with the county governments, we agreed that if a product is coming from county A, if it is levied there, it should not be interfered with until it can get to the destination market. But now I'm hearing again, they have those. I think I need to revisit it again and see exactly what is this happening. So I think we need to work together, and I can assure you, this is a very a profitable enterprise we're handling, farming, and I can assure you, Kenya will never be the same again. So having said that, I want now to read the speech which Dr. Kariuki wanted to deliver to this congregation today. He started by recognizing Lanley, economist and agroeconomic policy from FAO, Dr. Eric Ogumo, for agriculture specialist, and Felix, the organizer, and all those, all conference speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, all. To our international guests, please welcome to Nairobi, Kenya. It gives me great honor and pleasure to join you at this important first international conference on contract farming in Africa. This conference provides a forum for meaningful discussion, exchange of ideas, and development of strategies to improve the efficiency and the inclusivity of contract farming initiative in Africa. Furthermore, it provides an opportunity to discuss international contract farming as a key tool for boosting foreign direct investment in Africa. May I take this early opportunity to thank the conference organizers for this noble idea, while also thanking you all for accepting to come to Nairobi, Kenya. As we gather here today, it is imperative to recognize the role that agriculture plays not just as a source of food, but as an engine of economic development, as a catalyst for social change, and a means of improving livelihoods across our continent. Our continent, rich in fertile soils, favorable climates, and resilient people, has enormous potential to feed itself and the world. However, we are still facing challenges in agricultural productivity, food security, and livelihood improvement. The low agricultural productivity is as a result of several causes, such as lack of knowledge of updated technologies and practices, low use of improved seeds, low use of fertilizer, inadequate irrigation facilities, lack of incentive for farmers in the absence of remunerative market. Contract farming presents a powerful opportunity to address these challenges while advancing Africa's agricultural transformation. It enables farmers to secure reliable markets for their produce while ensuring buyers have access to the quality and the quantities of goods they need. Ladies and gentlemen, contract farming holds great promise, but it is important to acknowledge its challenges and risks. It can lead to unfair contracts or exploitation. Farmers might find themselves vulnerable if they lack negotiation power. Two, educating them on contract terms, and also educating our farmers to understand their legal obligation on these contracts. So I'm happy that we are gathered here today, and I hope some of these things will be addressed and will come up with ways of addressing them. To harness the full potential of contract farming in Africa, countries must put in policies and legal framework that ensure fair contracts, transparency, dispute resolution mechanism, and the contract must be protected for both farmers, agribusiness, and also the business partners. In Kenya, the government had formulated policies and frameworks that promote and strengthen contract farming systems. These include Agricultural Policy 2021. These things are speculated there, which emphasizes the importance of establishing a regulatory framework for contract farming to improve market access for crops, livestock, and fisheries products, and other related produce. On the other hand, the agricultural sector transformation and growth strategy recognizes the need to scale up commercial farms by unlocking public owned land for contract farming and training farmers and SMEs on assessing markets, including compliance to contract farming requirements. For the legal framework on contract farming, we rely on the law of contract and the Competition Act of Kenya. The Competition Act of Kenya, which is the context of contract farming, plays a critical role in preventing exploitative practices, especially when negotiating contracts with small-scale farmers. Despite the policy and legal framework, operational challenges may operational challenges, effective implementation and enforcement of contract farming laws still persist. Some of the major issues include contracts not being registered with the relevant authorities, making it difficult to resolve disputes or hold parties accountable, and large agribusiness often have the upper hand in negotiations, leaving smallholder farmers vulnerable to unfair contract terms and pricing mechanism. Many farmers lack awareness of their rights or access to formal arbitration processes. To promote contract farming, then, there is growing recognition of the need for stronger and more targeted policies and legal frameworks on contract farming, establishing specific guidelines and standards for contract farming arrangement, making contracts more transparent and enforceable, educating farmers about their rights and obligations, and encouraging the formation of more farmer associations, cooperatives for better negotiation. In conclusion, you will all agree with me that contract farming represents a powerful tool for transforming Africa agriculture sector. When implemented with fairness, transparency, and sustainability, it can help unlock continent's vast agricultural potential, improve rural livelihood, and promote food security. It offers a chance for small-scale farmers to break free from cycles of poverty and market isolation and to become integral part of African agricultural value chains. As we move forward and in consideration of the output of this conference, let us all work together, government, private sector, actors, civil society, and most importantly, farmers themselves to ensure that contract farming becomes a cornerstone of African agricultural, agricultural growth. By doing so, we can turn the promise of African agriculture into reality, feeding not only our continent, but the world. It is now, it now gives me a great pleasure to declare this conference officially open. Thanks so much. Na mubarikiwe sana na asanteni.
A round of applause for Bwana Marango. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Thank you. Asante. Thank you for the message from the Honorable Cabinet Secretary. You can pass our regards to him. He was missed, but you ably represented him. The reason I'm asking you to stay on is that we would like a photo opportunity. Okay, up on stage. You know, we know how government is. 1 minute you're sitting there, we look for you later, you are gone. So we want to, we want to take advantage now. Wendy. So please let me call up Paris, please Lanley as well to join. Is Dr. Ogumo here? If he's here, he can come up as well. Karibu Sana, also the representatives from the Saudi government, Saudi Kingdom, please come up as well. I can see there. Karibuni, karibuni sana. Maybe go to the center. Okay. Carol, were you hoping I wouldn't call you? I've called you. Please come up, come up. Carol Karaoke, Kepsa. After you made that clarion call to the government, there must be a photo. Thank you. I hope the media partners have taken the photos that they need. We are good? Okay, excellent, excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is now time for the first session. This will be on contract farming, models, benefits, best practices. We have several speakers that will be speaking on these topics. What I will ask you to do is once you're done with your presentation, I will ask you to take your seat here because at the end of all the presentations, we shall have a Q&A session. So once I call you up, you make your presentation. After your presentation, you can take a seat up here, if that's okay. Our first speaker is Lan Lee, economist from Agri-Foods Economics and Policy Division, Food and Agriculture Organization. Karibu sana, Lan Lee.
So this isn't go, you stop. Good morning, distinguished guests. I feel very honored to participate in this first international conference on contract farming. and to explore together with you some basic concepts about contract farming, and also briefly introduce our work on contract farming. And I thank the conference organizer, Ms. Paris, for their vision and valuable efforts in promoting responsible and sustainable contract farming. So let me begin with my presentation. So this is, okay, so it's on the side. So I'm from the Agri-Food Economics and Policy Division. I'm in the team of agribusiness and value chain development. So let me see. So my presentation will involve 5 topics. So mostly it's about the basic concepts of contract farming. So what is contract farming? Contract farming is essentially agreement made between a buyer and producers in advance. This is important. It's not just a sales contract, but a contract made in advance before production of agri-food products. These terms usually include price, quality, quantity, payment, and delivery provisions. And sometimes contract may also include terms and conditions on production methods, how the products will be produced, and whether inputs will be provided like fertilizers and seeds, and whether training and support services will be provided. Technical support services, but also may include logistic support and also provision of financial services, and may be provided by buyer or a third party. We are going to explore who, how, and why, and when contract farming is relevant. And I think last topic I will hand over to Dr. Ogumu. So who can be involved in contract farming? From the producer side, they can be smallholder producers, commercial um, commercial producers, and can be producer organizations. Um, it can be associations and cooperatives. And from buyer side, it can be a lot of actors along the agri-food value chains. Most commonly, we found contract farming to be practiced in processing and exporting sector. So they can be processors, exporters, wholesalers, traders, also retailers, as other speakers has mentioned the emergence of e-commerce. We have seen the utilization of contract farming in the digital age, and also food services and hospitality industry, like the convention center we are at. And also, contract farming can be an innovative tool for public-private partnerships and used in institutional procurements. So public institution development agencies and organizations can also be part of contract farming. They can be third party to support and facilitate contract farming, but can also be the parties to the contract. We will, and how we're going to implement contract farming. So in the next slide, in the next topic, we will explore different contract farming models. But here I want to emphasize we utilize contracts as the instrument to establish the responsibilities between parties. These are the terms and conditions written in a contract agreement. And why, and this is the next topic we're going to explore, why the growing interest of contract farming, in particularly in emerging and developing economies. Contract farming is not a new concept. It has been widely adopted in many countries. And in particularly in advanced economies, when they have more commercialized agri-food production. So here are some examples. So the data for the US is a little bit outdated, but in 2018, um, contract farming has been widely used in livestock production, in production of cash crops. But what we here want to emphasize is the intensified interest and adoption of contract farming in emerging and developing economies in recent decades. So one example is Brazil that have adopted contract farming early on. Now 75%, basically contract farming is um, one of the contributor to its um, to its development of poultry sector. Now it's the world leader in poultry production. So in 2015, they passed regulation on contract farming. This you can see the importance of contract farming in the commercialization of the agri-food sector in Brazil. But we also can find many examples of contract farming in Africa. So recently, we helped two countries. We helped Lesotho, but also in Belize, help them to develop a draft contract farming bill to present to the legislation. And also, excitingly, Ethiopia passed a proclamation of on contract farming last year. And in 2 weeks, I'm flying to Ethiopia to support the implementation of the proclamation. And also, one of the drivers of adoption of contract farming in these countries is transformation of global agri-food systems. As we know, we're becoming more integrated. The globalization, rising prominence of global food value chains have bring us all together more closely and with increasing population and also income, we found that consumers not only demand more safe products, but also they demand products with higher quality and more variety and convenience, and also produced in a way that do not harm our environment or produced in a way that do not harm our workers. And also the increasing competition that requires increased efficiency in the value chains. Um, this had led to greater integration, coordination of value chain actors vertically and horizontally, and the contract farming is part of that. And also in these countries, as um, as the development of value addition activity increases and also development of agribusinesses, this including not only processing but also support services and logistics, agri-food industries, export capacities. Um, the agri-food sector is becoming more commercialized, and contract farming is becoming an integral part of the business landscape in these countries. And contract farming has the potential to alleviate some of the challenges that faced by smallholder farmers in these countries. This is a part of the drivers for intensified adoption of contract farming in these countries. So we all understand long-standing constraints of the smallholder farmers face in developing countries. That is, they don't have the right knowledge and skills and market orientation for their production. We know subsistence agriculture and lack of access to market, to productive resources. We are talking about um, inputs, seeds, um, and finance, and lack of access to technologies, information, technical support, and capacity building, and also lack of organization and collective action. Also, we know that there's a lack of, but increasingly, I've seen a lot of exciting development of infrastructure facilities and actors in the value chain, lack of um, value chain activities, and yet lack of development and promising future of agribusiness and agro-industries. All these challenges has made, uh, uh, relatively speaking, low productivity, high transaction cost, and limited economic opportunities in the agri-food sector. In addition to these traditional challenges faced by smallholder farmers, we can see that compounding, there are emerging challenges that compound the existing difficulties. That how, with the rapid technological advancement and technology, there could be a technology divide and increasing requirement on technology adoption, quality and other standards. These all impose pressure on smallholder farmers. And also they bear the brunt of accelerating impact of climate change. So as we can see that contract farming has the potential to provide smallholder farmers access to economic opportunities, resources, technologies, and build capacities for commercial production. And also, contract farming can become conducive to sustainable development as it can as an instrument to incorporate environmental and social standards into the contract. This lay a basis for our discussions on what are some advantages and disadvantages of contract farming for both buyers and producers. So some of the advantages for producers, as we have mentioned, it provides access to buyers. And also, contract farming is an instrument in a way that to manage and reduce risks, production risk and commercial risks for both parties, because it sets the agreement on what products to produce, on what quantity and what price. As such, it helps secure more stable income and better production planning for producers. And it can improve access to inputs for smallholder farmers, and also technical assistance, training, financing solutions. And all of this lead to development of capacity for smallholder farmers, not only in terms of production, but also in terms of marketing. Because through contract farming, they will learn about markets, learn about the compliance with contract agreements. These are all bases for commercial production. And with increased economic opportunity, that leads to increased better livelihood for smallholder farmers. And for buyers, some of the potential benefits may include attraction for buyers for adoption include more reliable and consistent and more efficient supply of agri-food products, and greater conformity to quality and other standards. And also it makes buyer, because they have more control over production, to easier to respond to market demand and changing market conditions. This in turn similar to what the benefits bring to producer to help manage and reduce production commercial risks for buyer. And one of the constraints that some of the investors face are constraint of land and skilled labor for their commercial production. So there can be some controversial on land grabs, land grabbing issues. So contract farming can be a solution to alleviate some of the constraints. Of course, because of the vertical integration, that can lead to increasing efficiency and competitiveness. And also, as mentioned, with increasing push in terms of in the trade arena on responsible supply chains, contract farming can play an important role in implementing some of the responsible, sustainable, and social inclusive standards for exports for global markets. There also contract farming also comes with disadvantages and risks, potential risks. First of all, I want to say contract farming is not a silver bullet. It may not be the suitable and feasible business model for some agribusinesses. And even so, practitioners need to realize some of the risks and disadvantages and assess them and better manage and reduce these risks. So for producers, one of the key issue is unbalanced bargaining power not in terms of negotiation, but also in terms of contract farming implementation and disputes, and when contract breaches and when some of the hot issues rise. So collective action, organization of farmers are very important to overcome these challenges. And also we need to be aware of possible delays in payments and input delivery or delivery services that may make contract farming less attractive for farmers. And also this also may mean that in particular when contract farming include what we call exclusivity contract terms, that may reduce producers' selling options. And also, we are concerned in some cases, introduce of commercial production might impose environmental risks that lead to monocropping and loss of biodiversity. And also, one of the critics of contract farming is, although it expands opportunity for smallholder farmers, but also it may impose some concerns that farmers without land who are not as skilled will be excluded from contract farming, particularly in piloting phase. So that's why we encourage business to design inclusion strategies to include these farmers in the longer term if it's not in the pilot stage. So there also comes with some concerns for potential concerns of buyers because managing contracts and also if you provide technical support inputs, this will come as a higher transaction cost, may come as a higher transaction cost compared to alternative procurement models. Especially when you contract with a large number of farmers. But there are ways that you design business model to overcome these challenges. And also, one of the big concerns about contract farming implementation is contract breaches, in particularly when the legal and regulatory frameworks for enforcement, contract enforcement is not perfect. And risks of farmers misuse inputs and side selling inputs or doesn't follow the production methods that may lead non-conformity of quality standards. All these are concerns. And also increasing costs, not only in terms of contracting costs, but support services, supporting costs. And it may lose as buyers increase investments in the contract farming may lose flexibility in their procurement. And also sometimes when we see in some cases when something goes wrong, and sometimes because you work with smallholder farmers that may bring reputation risks when things go wrong. So overall, I want to mention that in practice, in the real world, we have seen increasing adoption of contract farming. That's a testament to the increase that the positives outweigh the negatives in contract farming. And also, we want to emphasize creating an enabling environment that including legal, regulatory, and policy environment and also encouraging multi-stakeholder collaboration in promoting contract farming. And also it's key for business to evaluate feasibility for contract farming, as it may not be a viable solution. So finally, I want to introduce some contract farming models that we found in the field. So one of the ways when we look at contract farming is contract can be either production oriented or marketing oriented. So when you pilot contract farming, if you have no experience in contract farming, and also it depends if you are hospitality industry, you are traders, wholesalers, or even retailers. Um, Marketing-oriented production often is more suitable. It focuses mainly on the sales of products. You can still have different standards, quality and delivery and so on, but you are not as involved as others. But some of other production, some of the contract farming involves more oversight from buyer side on production, have more control over production. So in reality, we find contract usually to be the spectrum from mostly focused on marketing to very involved in production, some usually somewhere in between. And also, I will introduce 5 models of contract farming. If we look at from the operational point of view, how the contract farming is organized. But in reality, this is a generalization. You will find oftentimes the hybrid of different models in the practice. So the most common model, what we call centralized model, this involves the buyer directly contract with the producers. On the production and marketing of agri-food commodity. This can be solely on the sales, the purchase of the commodity, but also can be more involved in the production that you can provide seeds, seeds, fertilizers, chemicals, even machineries, infrastructure. We've seen this in poultry and other livestock fishery production a lot. And also, you can provide training and technical support services. We found this model most often used in exporting and processing industries, buyers, usually large volumes with higher stringent quality standards. We found a lot in tea, in coffee, tobacco, poultry, and also fishery products. The second model. Hmm? Can someone help? Our supporting staff. Okay, so the second model is our grower model. This is quite well known. I think sometimes think it's synonymous to contract farming. We also call it. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. Nuclear system model. So this usually happens when in 2 scenarios. I found people are mostly familiar with the first one is that the buyer, whether it's exporter, processor, has already commercial production of their own. And then they want to expand production when they face land constraint of skilled labor. Then they began to contract other farmers to increase their supply. But also, this also happens if a business already contract with some large commercial farms, and later they can use these farms as nuclears to contract. We call it lead or nucleus farms to contract more farmers. So in both cases, we call if you want to expand your production through contracting more smallholder farmers, we call it nuclear system model. So this is very helpful when you have a large operation to contract out to hundreds, even thousands of farmers. To have nuclear farms, to have commercial farms can help to manage a large number of contracts. But also your commercial farm can be used for demonstration, capacity building, and also because we already have a lot of capacities in terms of human resources, technologies, and so on and so forth. So these are very relevant for these buyers. And also multi-party model, usually we call it a more complex model because it involves more parties than just a buyer and producers. It may involve input providers, financial institutions to provide loans, to incorporate in the multipartite. But increasingly, we've seen this model being used in public and private partnerships. When government is involved in some way, for example, in providing extension services, in introducing input subsidies, integrating input subsidies into the control farming program. We've seen in Mexico and other countries, and also in Ghana, in Africa, also in China, with cooperatives. This model has been applied. And also intermediate model, oftentimes, these three models, multipartite, intermediary, and also even the nuclear state model are oftentimes in combination in practice. So intermediary model sometimes help to overcome the challenge of managing large number of farmers, and also suitable for buyers are not very experienced to work with farmers directly. Okay, so this also comes with risks of less control over the production. Finally, it's informal model. We encourage control farming operations to adopt the formal control farming in the way that we encourage the use of written control farming agreements. So in informal model, usually the agreements are reached verbally. When there is a lack of linkages between buyer and producer, when they just begin to establish relationships, this is very encouraging to have informal linkages. But over time, we highly encourage formal agreements. Last slides, very quickly, on control farming. FAO's work on control farming. So one of the important role we play is in management. I want to emphasize the importance of the publication of UNIDROIT FAO and IFAD legal guide on control farming. This guide has been very useful in many countries in drafting their legislation in control farming. And also, this is not just for regulations. It's a guiding principle, provide guiding principles in contract development for responsible contracts in practice. And also, we welcome you to visit our Control Farming Resource Center. This is a one-stop website to provide you with a variety of resources for control farming. We have a training program. We have different tools and publications on control farming to all free access. And also, we provide technical support in the fields. We provide training, but also recently we helped 2 countries to draft their control farming legislation in Belize and in Lesotho. And then we help conduct assessments and also facilitate pilots. And recently we have done 2 pilots for honey and dry beans to help the design of the pilots, develop the model agreement, and negotiation of the model agreements, and help them to set up the pilots for control farming. With that, I thank you and welcome to visit our website and contact us if you have any questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lan Chi of the FAO, for a very comprehensive and detailed presentation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Eric Ogumo from the IFC. He is an agricultural specialist, an expert with over 20 years of agricultural experience across Africa. Karibu sana, Dr. Eric Ogumo.
Right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Ogumo, and I do a number of things. I consult for IFC World Bank Group as a career specialist. I also co-manage Crop Masters Limited, which is an agribusiness consultancy founded 10 years ago. I'm also a co-founder and managing partner of Crop Health Vision Kenya Limited, which is part of a Dutch subsidiary that in the space of crop health and soil sustainability. So my colleague Lan has spoken so much about contract farming and the benefits, but I will narrow down to a number of aspects that will kind of ignite the discussion with the panelists coming forward. And basically, I will narrow myself to maximizing impacts of contract farming so as to ensure sustainability and responsible sourcing. All over the world, a lot of multinationals are under pressure to be responsible or to be seen to be responsible. So I will try to take you through about 6 slides or so. Some of them could be repetitive of what Lan talked about, so I will skip them. So if you see me skip them, don't get worried. Right. Basically, I think in terms of contract farming, Lan put it very clearly that it has existed very well for many years. So contract farming is not new. It's a concept that has been in existence for a long time. And basically, the reason why contract farming is becoming very relevant now is because, as I said earlier on, is that most multinationals are looking to be relevant, but also there's a huge demand in terms of food. The global population is increasing, and there's a lot of urbanization. So there's a lot of pressure from the food companies to outsource commodities, to outsource raw materials, and as a matter of that, that has really resulted in a lot of pressure on the production. Earlier on, Land mentioned the fact that Asia and Latin America are leading in terms of contract farming. Unlike what we have in Africa, or rather this part of Africa, which is mainly known as the Goa model. And I think in places like Latin America and Asia, contract farming has been huge, especially in the space of livestock, poultry, pigs, beef, and the likes. So I think there's a bit of development now towards sub-Saharan Africa to adopt the same. I will skip this slide because Lan already captured it very well. I think initially when we shared the topics amongst ourselves, we were not clear who's going to cover what until the last minute. So, but this is also very helpful. Lan already outlined it very clearly in terms of the advantages and disadvantages of contract farming. Sorry, we're stuck. Yes, good. Right. Also, disadvantages have been highlighted by Lan, so I will not go into that. I will skip to the next slide again, so that right. In terms of the criteria for selecting contract farming models, as Lan described earlier on, the number of models that exist in contract farming, then what makes a farmer or a buyer decide which model to use? So there are a number of criteria that will help with that kind of decision-making process, because it must be kind of a model that benefits either the buyer or the farmer. So basically, what happens is that a number of factors will determine that. And the most and foremost important factor that determines which model to use is access to resources. And the biggest resource in farming is land. So depending on how much land the farmer has, then the farmers can be able to get into an agreement with the buyer. So land not only the main resource, but we also have resources like access to water. We also have labor and also other financial capability to be able to meet the requirement of the buyer. The next one is knowledge and experience. And this is very important, especially for kind of products that are very delicate or requires a lot of expertise. So before a buyer contracts a farmer or a farming group, they have to validate or confirm that the grower or the farmer has the knowledge that is required to produce that crop. For those of you who are familiar with kind of export business we do in Kenya, there are certain crops that cannot be grown by any farmer. That those are given, they call it in-house production because they're either too delicate or the risk is too high. So when I say about a risk, it's about risk on food safety or risk in terms of it requires high level facilities to grow it under greenhouse, to be protected from adverse weather conditions like flooding or excessive rain or even extreme sunny conditions. Okay, the other one is trustworthiness. When you talk of a model whereby the buyer has to provide the farmer with resources, and these resources could be either advanced payment or input, either in kind, tons and tons of seeds or fertilizers. So there must be a level of trustworthiness, meaning that the buyer must know the farmers very well to be able to entrust them with the kind of investment. In my previous role, when I was a group agronomist for some of the leading exporters here in Kenya, we had debt books close to 200 million Kenya shillings of seed. Now, why was it so? This was because farmers would take seeds on credit, and the exporter thought that was a good thing, and the farmers would eventually sell the produce to somebody who pays cash. And the exporter was not able to recover these kind of debts. So that level of trustworthiness will determine what kind of model to use. If the buyer feels like the farmer is not trustworthy, then he would rather engage in a different model whereby the risk is low. Contract type. I remember very well when the secretary mentioned about the factor of requiring, and I think Carol mentioned it too. In the event there's no documented contract between the buyer and the farmer, most of the times the risk is high because there's less motivation in terms of the commitment. So if the contract is robust, it is watertight, it has rooms and venues for mitigation and arbitration, then that brings a lot of levels of confidence. And most of the two parties tend to work together harmoniously. Yeah. Access to finance and credit is critical because access to finance gives the farmers the leeway to determine which kind of model works for them. But if the farmer is at the mercy of the buyer, most of the times it doesn't go well. The, the farmer will always end up with the shorter end of the stick. Access to market information. And this is very critical because I will tell you that most of the farmers, not many of them have the market information. Most buyers have the information, but as usual, they keep it under the table because they use this to their benefit. And we'll discuss this in the next slide in terms of what we need to do to develop sustainable and responsible contract farming models. So I think I mentioned this more than 3 times now, that globally there's a push. Everybody wants to look good. The multinationals want to look good. I mean, the big guys, the Kellogg's, they want to look good in the eyes of the people, but also in the eyes of consumers. There's a lot of pressure with a number of organizations pushing multinationals to show them that how are you supporting the communities from where you source. I was involved in one of the setup of local sourcing for Coca-Cola for the local juice ingredient, the Minute Maid. I was a pioneer agronomist that designed that supply chain. And this is because Coca-Cola was under pressure to show how are you supporting the communities where your market exists. So you'll see a lot of contract farming growing because the pressure is there, fair trade is there. And most of the times, if you look at especially the fresh produce sector, fair trade products, those products are sourced from smaller farmers that give premiums to the local communities, are they pay premium because somebody somewhere in Europe or the Western world would want to give, but would not want to give for free, would want to give on a product that has been sourced in a socially and ethically acceptable way. So the pressure is there, and it will still continue to grow. Right. So for us to ensure that there is sustainability and responsible sourcing in contract farming models in sub-Saharan Africa, first and foremost is an enabling policies and regulation. I will tell you that currently the kind of contract farmings that we have in sub-Saharan Africa, not many of them are documented. It is a verbal contract. Farmers are told by an extension agent or agronomist of an exporter or a buyer, plant for me this, I will come and pick. So they will only pick when they need it. In the event that the market crashes, they don't pick your call. So this kind of arrangement puts the farmer at a disadvantaged position. So first and foremost is that the government must work towards ensuring that there's a policy framework to ensure that the farmers are protected in the kind of contract they get into. And that must also provide for arbitration. What happens if the farmer went ahead, engaged his land, his input, all his resources, and the buyer does not pay the agreed price? Sometimes they leave the price open. They don't commit in writing. So they'll buy it at what they call market price. And I think Carol mentioned this earlier on in terms of minimum price guarantee. This is the way to go. Without a minimum price guarantee, the farmers cannot make money. Sorry, they're coming, all of them now. That's fine. The next one is enhancing diversity of cropping. I will tell you that depending on what kind of commodity you're talking about, most contract farmers, or rather buyers, most contract buyers will only go for what they have market for. I'll give you a typical example. Tobacco. If BAT wants tobacco, they'll push you plant tobacco, plant tobacco, plant tobacco. The risk is there. There's several ways. One is food security risk. If you keep on planting tobacco or sugarcane every year in, year round, you'll not have food crops. So that's a risk. The risk number two is from soil health perspective. If you do monocropping, you end up with a degraded soil. So what am I trying to say is yes, the buyers must be considerate. They must integrate sustainable approaches to cropping. They must allow the farmers to intercrop and do crop rotation. So most buyers just be greedy. They only push, 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 and drain the soil. The next one is transparency in the market information. Most of the times, the negotiated price at start of January may not the price when the crop is harvested. Maybe the global price has gone up. So I think it's about time that because the buyer will fetch more, it will be fair enough that they adjust the price so that the farmer gets the full benefit of the production. Right. This is the thing. Narrow the gap in the bargaining power. I think one of the secretary mentioned it also. Most of the negotiations that we have between the buyer and the farmer is always disadvantaged. And why are they disadvantaged? Is because either they don't have the information on the market, or two, they're desperate. So this calls for leadership. This calls for the leadership of the buyers organization. It's a matter of what I call moral obligation as a leader, that you have to be fair and give the farmer a transparent breakdown of the cost of goods. Just be honest with the farmer, say, fine, this is what I'm buying it for, this is my cost. Some of the costs may be confidential, but give a fair price so that the farmer basically has an opportunity to make a good decision so that they don't make losses. The other one is increased access to finance. This is a big one because if farmers have access to finance, they will make a very good decision. They can make a decision of what crop to grow, when to grow it, and whom to grow it for. But if finance is not available or too expensive, farmers will always remain at the mercy of the buyers because buyers will tell them, we'll give you input on credit. And basically, what that means is that they are the mercy to sell at the price that the buyer would want to buy. So if farmers would have access to finance, they'll not go to the buyer for credit. And sometimes what happens is that lack of integrity and honesty of the buyers can also drive farmers into losses because, especially when it comes to issue of grading, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. So grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 is at the mercy of the buyer. The produce is with the buyer. They'll tell the farmer, come and collect your produce. It's been rejected. And the cost of collecting that produce is not cheap. So at the end of the day, the farmer gives up and say, fine, just bin it. So that level of integrity and honesty must come overboard so that the buyer is honest and transparent with the farmers. And this is the last one. Provide farmers with technical and business skills, not just business skills of counting money. I will tell you for free is that what we've realized in the last, I would say, 20 years, most farmers never consider the economic cost. We have a financial cost, but we have economic cost. A small-scale farmer who is growing beans in Muranga will only consider his cost of seeds, fertilizer, chemicals. He will not consider cost of himself as a laborer. He will not consider the cost of his daughter or son doing the irrigation. So we need to educate the farmers to be able to know their economic cost. Because without the knowledge of the economic cost, they could think they're making money. But if they factored in the economic cost, if he was to pay himself, he forfeits his holiday. He works from 6 to 6. He doesn't go on holiday. He has no off days. So if he was to factor that, his eyes would open and say, come on, I'm wasting time. So we need to make sure that the farmers have that kind of knowledge. And that information is very important for them. Good. So that's the end of my presentation. So thank you very much. Good.
Thank you. Our last speaker for this session is Eunice Mongera. Eunice Mongera is a business executive from Hillside Green Growers and Exporters. Karibu sana, Eunice.
Good morning. I will take a very short time, so relax. A lot has been covered by my colleagues and fantastic resource. But two things, since this is a conference on contract farming, we will have to get used to the buzzword contract farming. It will be mentioned many times. It will be discussed many times, and it will have the same kind of problems, solutions, barriers, challenges. And I think the way, for those who thought about it, and thank you for inviting some of us, it's that at the end of this, we should come up with a resolution that mirrors the green revolution of the 20th century so that Kenya, Africa, can embrace a 21st green revolution. It is possible, it is doable, and I think, thank you for putting this together. The challenge is for us to actually actualize the fact that we are an agrarian economy, we are fed by our farmers, and yet they are the least paid. And so we sit here to try and figure out some of the solutions to how we can spur growth in the agriculture sector. My name is Eunice Mongera, as it is been displayed out there. I am here to talk about practical, not theory. You asked whether there are some Kenyans who are doing contract farming. I want to confirm that we are doing contract farming. I've been in export for over 25 years, and therefore contract farming, we didn't necessarily range them in terms of formal, informal, but we worked with farmers in the manner that has been described here. And I can attest that for those exporters who are here, contract farming has been with them. You know that private sector, export is a private sector driven initiative. And many of the exporters work with contracts with farmers. And therefore they sign contracts. Whether they are formal in the manner that the FAO has described them or not, it works. And we have exported using the contract farming methods. So I'll go quickly to a few things which have really been covered. When we began Hillside, and I'll keep referring to my practical example so that we move a bit from the theory to the actual doing it. When we began off export some 25 years ago, we realized that the value chain from farming to the pack house to the market to discussing with the airlines to visiting the market where the product is going was such a long calling. It's a long value chain and it is a heavy calling. It was going to be difficult for one to be able to man the whole of that value chain. And so of necessity, then we began to think of how it is possible to divide ourselves so that we can concentrate and define our niche, which was really buying and selling. And therefore, it meant that we have to build systems so that producers can give us the produce that we're looking for. So one of the things that we discovered is that farmers are very fragmented, and I think you know that already. And producers, farmers at the level of producing beans, mangosteen, snow peas, passion fruits, mangoes, then were so fragmented that you could hardly fill in the quantities that you're looking for. And so of necessity, we were drawn to organizing these farmers. So one of the features of our contract farming, especially for exporters, is that the buyer is the one who leads the way and actually organizes the group into what we call farmers groups, so that then they can produce the crop. Many of you know about Kirinyaga with the French beans. You know about the sugar snaps in Kinangop. You know about now the avocados that are really coming up in Muranga areas, Meru areas, and so on. So the method that the buyers use, especially the exporters who are registered, is to go further then and invest in farmers and begin to organize them. The unpredictability forces us to want to organize the farmers, because if you don't, then tomorrow they'll give you 5 tons, you have an order, or you have a plan, or you have a strategic roadmap to send 10 tons every week. And 1 week they will produce 5 tons, the next week they will produce 2 tons, and therefore you have irregularities with your order. So one of the things that causes us as exporters then to organize them is to sort out the inconsistency and the unpredictability of the production. The other thing that we find, which is part of the features of the contract farming, is that farmers, and you talked about it, is the trustworthiness of the farmers. And therefore, I'll talk about untrustworthiness of the farmers. This is a two-way, because also the buyers can get quite untrustworthy. And so as a result, then you want to organize your farmers, sign a contract, and begin to build some trust relationship. We have also realized that technology has come to help us a great deal in mapping where the farmers are. There's a drone, the use of drones currently, even for spraying. There's a use of drones to map out the areas that require certain fertilizers. So the embracing of technology is something that exporters then are embracing and teaching the farmers, or bringing the farmers on board, so that we are able to maximize on technology. Farmers are very informalized, like somebody has said, and therefore we spend time training them, skills building them, capacity building them, bringing up them to understand and to appreciate that whatever they are farming is actually certain standards and qualities that are to be met. I do recall that I used to go to Kirinyaga and sit with my farmers, and we would craft songs about how to get our beans for the queen, because I used to tell them we were exporting to Europe then, that we are feeding the queen, and therefore we should feed the queen with the best, but also feed ourselves with the best. And for farmers, especially in the yesteryears who are not as literate, you have to get a style of trying to educate them to see the need for quality, quantity, and also formalizing their businesses. Like it has been said, when there is no contract farming, there is either overproduction or unproduction. So contract farming comes then to help with regulating how much you want to produce within a certain time. Then I think the advantages of farming, of contract farming, have been covered. The fact that there is consistency in volumes if you have a contract farming contracts with the farmers. Price is actually stabilized. I think that has been covered. You get to have quality production when you're working with contract farming, improved volumes and quantities and qualities when you embrace contract farming, increased incomes that, of course, trickle down to the farmers, to the pickers, to the aggregators, to the brokers. We used to call them brokers then. I remember there was a fight for them to be called off-takers and not brokers. And we used to argue that in that long value chain, everybody has a percentage of their profit, in as long as we all agree to be organized, that we don't cut corners and not keep the contracts that we have all signed. Currently, I think the advantage is that there's a bit of infrastructural development, like I've said, not only of the technology, but there are code rooms that are coming up, warehouses that are coming up. The government is also putting some collection centers. That helps the farmers then to be able to deliver the products in a systematic way to certain centralized places. And therefore, it lifts the burden of we, the exporters, from having to build. We used to build actually warehouses so that farmers have somewhere to deliver their produce. And the way it worked then is the circles. Somebody has talked about circles and people coming together. Circles have worked in the education sector, in the health sectors. I don't know why they shouldn't work even with horticulture or these other agricultural sector crops. So we used to organize them into circles and ensure that they own the circles. They have the leadership. They provide the leadership to those circles. They have their rules, their regulations, their constitution. They have their accounts. They manage the payments. Then we would link them to the inputs, the pest inputs, so that there is a circle. There is the buyer, there is the farmer, there is the input, and then the transporter. We found that manageable because it reduces the costs on the exporter, who then has to pick all these things. What are the barriers to contract farming, or what did we find out? As it has been said, in the years, and I think farmers are changing a little bit. They are a little bit more educated out there in the rural areas. It is we who are retiring and going to farming. And so they are now a little bit more knowledgeable, and therefore they're able to organize themselves into not only groups, but they are able to negotiate for prices. Breach of contract was quite a thing during our export times. Switching of crops, they would move from, you have contracted for beans. After 2 months, you go for your beans and you realize the farmer has gotten into planting maize, and therefore your value chain is actually messed, over the period. So like somebody has said, what we then used to do, apart from having contract farming, contract signed, then we would ensure that we have technical staff that work with the farmers. Agronomists were part of our system. In the years, of course, there were extension workers that were employed by the government. That is no longer happening. And so the buyers or the exporters have to invest into agronomists, technical people that will be able to guide the farmers. We also found that some of the agronomists or supervisors or farm managers, of course, would be untrustworthy and therefore break the contracts. And so what then we used to do is actually have the contract signed and domiciled at the chiefs. Those days they were the chiefs, now they are counties. I'm sure they are able to help us. I think the government was represented here. And one of the things that would really work is if the rules and regulations, I think what you talked about, at that level are so clarified that you can actually deposit a document at the lower level of the county and it is honored. And if there is an issue, then there is somewhere you can actually take your claim or go to complain. In those days, we used to domicile them at the chiefs, and therefore you would time when there's a barasa for you to sort out an issue of side selling, issues of somebody having bought your crop and so on. So of course it becomes an expensive business. The best, like somebody said, is really building trusts and having farmers to appreciate that it is business that they are in, and that when they succeed, we all succeed in this value chain. Of course, the weather is quite an issue, you know that, and particularly the climate change that we are all experiencing. So even when you have signed these contracts, it becomes quite a difficult situation when there are excess rains or there are droughts, and therefore we, the exporters, have to scout for different regions that match the rain seasons in certain places. So if you're growing beans in Meru during April rains, then you'll find that during November rains, you have to move to Kambani or to Laikipia or to Kinagop, where the rains will be different. So that's another struggle that contract farming has to sort of um, get a solution around it. Lack of trust, I've talked about that. It is important to have not only the document signed, but build a long-term relationship with the farmers. Finally, way forward, this is my proposal. Since we have, we are an agrarian continent, really. And like I said, in the last century, Swaminathan, that was his name, the guy behind the Green Revolution, plus people like Norman Borlaug, a scientist from the US. They came up with ways to counter these challenges. And some of their proposals is what we are proposing here. One, I think, is quality seeds to the farmers, hybrid good quality seeds. Two is agronomical practices. We have to invest in finding out how to advise our farmers to increase their output. Three is look at the policies, like we have seen that the government is deploying at that level of the farming, so that as they deploy policies on sugarcane, for instance, it should apply to these other crops, including tea, including rice, including the horticulture, including the cabbages, everything else. I think they should apply there. The other one is look at not only the quantity but the quality of what is being produced. And therefore, the call on all of us and the government is to invest in training, capacity building, extension services, which our parents benefited from, so that then the farmers are actually farming knowledgeable, they are farming with best output in mind, and they're not just doing it as a hobby, as has been the case. So by scaling these proposals to other sectors, I see us coming up with actually the 21st green revolution in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eunice. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for sharing that practical perspective. I think that's very important as we discuss contract farming. It will now open it up for questions. Please just raise your hand. There's somebody who has a microphone, and if you can just say who the question is directed to as well. Thank you. Or maybe just, oh, there's another microphone. Okay.
Hello, habari zenyu. My name's Nancy Mudhoni Kibiko, and I'm from Moro. I came here because really I wanted to learn about international contract and even to help me and so that I can help others in Moro. We are in a place where it's very remote but very productive. But to my worries is I'm hearing very good comment, very good advices, but there at Moro, nobody to assist us. Like now, I've tried everything. I have about 10 acres of potatoes. I do potatoes, whatever. And now, to my surprise, even you can feel mercy for us in Moro. The government ordered that a bag of 50 kgs, to be selling 50 kgs per bag. But the brokers, my God, they do it 100 kgs. And what we are getting is very retro. The input we are putting, we are getting nothing. And now I understand, Mrs. Who? Mogera. If you can help us, even we can change and stop the potatoes, whatever, because we are getting nothing. We are getting nothing. And Moro is a very productive place where I am. But now, what can we really do? Like now, I will harvest the potatoes on December, but I will get nothing. The fertilizers, the what, very expensive. Uh, the insecticide and whatever, it's very expensive. Now, I'm very happy to be here so that I can learn more and even to take your contact so that you people can help us. Their people are very hardworking, but we get nothing. If a bag of potatoes, viazi we are selling at 2,500. That is 100 kgs, and government ordered 50 kgs. But because there is nobody to look after that, we are really, really in a mess. I don't know what we are going to do. Nobody to advise us as how you people you are advising us what we can do, what we can plant, about the seeds, about what. But really, I want to tell you people that we Kenyans there at Moro, really we are very poor. And I came all the way from Moro to this conference to hear and even to learn more about it. Please, please, please come to our rescue. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That is a call for help. What do we do? What are the produce that we are supposed to focus on? How do we empower ourselves? How do we build capacity? I think that one perhaps Madam Eunice you'll speak to, but let's take a couple of questions.
Hello, everybody. Just like many of you, I'm also Kenyan, and this could not be better timing because I was waiting for an actual farmer to speak. I am an exporter of avocados, and maybe Eunice can give us some light on this as well with her experience. I can confirm to you, brokers and other people to sell your produce to. The best channel you want to use is people like myself. If there's another farmer here, you want to sell avocados, talk to me directly, because those brokers will steal from you, and they will come and steal from me as well. So I stand to be corrected, but in my experience, I can give you guys a lot of evidence on that. So don't waste your time taking your produce to the brokers.
His name is Khalid Khan. You need to take his number before this conference is over, isn't it? Yes, yes. Questions? Let me get to him, then I'll come to you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Zakayo Gombe. I work for a corporation and I'm also a farmer. My question goes to Eunice on contract here. How do you handle breaches? How do you handle breaches of the contracts? Breaches? Do you do arbitration? Do you go to court? Or either on the side of the farmer or on the side of the buyer?
Breaches of contract, and perhaps maybe even Landley, you can talk about what you've seen, how breaches have been handled outside of, because I think it's also going to be best practices as we go on.
Good morning, everyone. I'm called Isa. I'm the agronomist and CEO of the East African Youth Leadership and Humanitarian Support. As we know, we have a challenge for the fertilizers. What we know is what happened in Russia and Ukraine, the wars in the COVID-19 time. So how can we improve the issue of the fertilizers in our farmers? Thank you.
There was a lady there. So let me take this final one, then we'll go to the panel, get some answers, and then come back out for another couple of questions, yeah? Oh, she had
Okay. Oh, my name is Fanis from Cereal Growers Association, and our key focus is farmer representation. And I see we are on your neck, Eunice, but I would like to know, I think it is from your real-time experience, I'd like to know how do you ensure that what Dr. Ogumo had said about the narrowing the gap in bargaining power. How do you ensure that farmers have a say? Yes.
Okay, we'll take one more before we go to the answers.
Thank you. My name is Helekia Moracha from the University of Eastern Africa, Baraton. And I've just been looking at who the strategic partners are, corporate exhibitors, media, but I've not seen the institutions, educational institutions, as partners in this event, because we seem to have already hatched a number of CF chicks, contract farmers. I don't mean the chicks as in chicken. And at the same time, I therefore would like to know who is going to be our brooder to nurture the chicks. And if we have plans to incorporate these educational institutions, I actually invite all this team to the University of Eastern Africa, Baraton, in Nandi County, to come and set a center for contract farmers. So as you also answer me, I think it would be a prudent idea to spread this gospel to the rural setting.
That deserves some applause. You see, we've been saying from the beginning that we want this conference to be one where actions come out of it, that it is not just a discussion and it ends here. Here we have an invitation to go to Baraton and set up a center. Thank you very much. Now, this is the last question, then we'll go to the answers.
Okay, thank you. I'm Chris Juma. I'm attending the event at personal level. My question goes to Eunice. Eunice, you just mentioned that one of the problems that you people are facing is the irregularities in supply. And I want to believe that one of the causes of the irregularities is the problem of post-harvest losses, which accounts to about 40% the total produce that our farmers do produce, especially in the horticulture industry. How do you handle the problem of post-harvest when you contract farmers? How do you handle it at the farm gate level? Thank you.
Okay, as you know, this conference is going on for today and tomorrow, so there'll be many more opportunities to engage and ask questions. But we are so encouraged by what we are seeing. We are encouraged by the level of engagement that we have. So let me turn it to the speakers to answer the questions very briefly. And after that, we will take a short break and then go into the next session. So does Eunice want to start since you have the heavy lifting of all the questions? You can do it wherever's comfortable there, or you can stand up.
Can you hear me? You can. Okay.
Or do you want this? Oh, when you stand, okay.
Farmers don't like people who do not go to where they are. Let me start. I'll be very brief because, of course, my colleagues will give us the international experiences. So we are giving the local experiences and what has worked for us. Let me begin with the post-harvest. My friend there who is asking about how do you deal with post-harvest losses, which he has correctly said 40% of farmers' harvests goes to post-harvest. I think the way to look at that is to go a step back towards the planting, what kind of seeds you're planting, the handling of the crop. Are you spraying the right pesticides? The fertilizer, are you improving the yields courtesy of the fertilizer? 2018, 2019, those of us who are in export know that there was a huge problem with export of fresh produce from Kenya, courtesy of the MRLs. Yeah, I think my colleague knows that. And Kenya was actually banned from exporting French beans, sugar snaps, and many other crops, much as it was the leading feeder of Europe with those crops. And the reason was because of the quality of pesticides that were being used by the farmers. And so what did the companies do? We had myriad of meetings, we had workshops, we petitioned the government, and we realized there is that which the government can do, but there is that which we need to do. So one of the other solution is coming together. Those who are growing the fresh produce, there is FPIC. I think somebody will be here talking about FPIC. You have to join these organizations because that's where your voice is going to be heard. Even my sister who is talking about potatoes, you have to come together so that your voice is heard. In Europe, farmers actually close streets and things do not happen for a week until they are recent. So I think we have to learn to come together, to bargain, to advocate, and to fight for our rights. So in terms of the post-harvest losses, there is a lot of study that has been advanced in almost every value chain about the post-harvest, and it zeroes to the quality that is being produced, to the storage of that crop, and of course to the fact that there is what we call a glut, where everybody farms the same crop, same time, and then there is plenty of harvest. So belonging to a contract group with a buyer then almost shields you from some of the post-harvest losses that come as a result of excess. I hope I've answered that. There's somebody who has asked about the way forward. I think it's this gentleman. Like we have said, I think Nina and the organizers take this also to the counties. This is where action is happening. This is where rules and regulations have to be made. This is where the county, you had somebody saying that you move a crop from one county to another. By the time it gets to Nairobi, it is 10% more expensive than you got it. Not that anything has happened to it except the levies and taxes that have to be paid. So I think we need to harmonize so that we have this discussion in counties. I would be very happy if it went even, around all the counties and you have conversations about how to reduce costs for the farmers. So bring the farmer at the table as you do this. There was a question that was asked by my sister about what she can do with the potatoes. I think the government has passed quite some regulations and rules about the size of the sack. There's a time the size used to be taller than the person that is loading it, and then it went down to a certain size. But what I hear you saying is that there is overproduction and it's not being picked. My advice is please get together, organize yourselves into lobby groups, into farmers groups that can actually advocate for your crop and for your value chain. In terms of best practice payment, somebody asked about what happens when there is no payment. Yeah, somebody was asking that. So in the contract, I think she did it very well. You have to put the do's and don'ts of the buyer and of the producer so that then you are all observing those rules. Of course, there will be a time that somebody doesn't meet those obligations. Then you negotiate, you go through the mediation if there is one. This is how we used to go to the chiefs so that they can mediate for us. Now I think I hear there are county, what are they called? County executives that are very interested in some of these things. So that can be taken there. But I think trust is the main thing. You cannot, as a buyer, sit in Nairobi and have a group that you're not continuously and consistently talking to. We used to take our farmers groups out to exhibitions, even to Germany, to see where their crop lands. So it's a relationship that you have to build over time. I think I'll stop at that so that somebody else can continue.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Ogumo, maybe you can speak to the fertilizer question that was asked.
Sorry, I didn't get it very clearly. You want to come up, please? I didn't get your question clear.
Thank you, sir. As we know, we have challenge for fertilizer issues, and what we know, there was a coronavirus time, we lack of fertilizer. The issue was wars of Ukraine and Russia. So how can we improve our fertilizer in African people? We get our fertilizer to improve and to get well fertilizer to our farmers. Thank you.
Right, I think that's clearer now. So I will attempt to answer that. I think some of it could be policy regulation of the government, but in terms of trade and commercials, yes. I think the cost of fertilizer, NPK, I mean, those are the main fertilizers that we use in production in sub-Saharan Africa, and most of it is imported, especially the P and N. But I think there's opportunity for us to do local production. So I think it's a challenge to the investors to come and invest for local production, but also it's a challenge to the government to to kind of provide what I would call incentives to investors to be able to produce locally, because by local production, the cost will be lower and affordable to the farmers, while at the same time creating employment to the Kenyan community. So that's how I think it should be addressed here. There's another question by a lady with regards to how do we ensure that farmers get the better end of the bargain? Well, bargaining is very crucial in any business. I'm a master commercial negotiator, so through Crop Masters, we provide consultancies and training on commercial negotiation, especially in contract farming and export businesses. So what I would advise is that for any farmer to be able to bargain and negotiate effectively, one, they must have the information. If they don't have the information, they can talk to experts. Look out, read widely about the market, the product, the cost, speak to other people before you go into venture. What is their price? What are the challenges? What is the grade out? What are the risks involved? So with all this information, it becomes very easy for you to bargain. But that is not enough. The biggest challenge we have in sub-Saharan Africa is that there's always a saying of there's unity, the strength is in the unity. Farmers would want to go alone most of the times, But the buyers also like it when they deal with single farmers because they can twist them quickly. So I would only advise farmers, if you have few of you, small units, please go into cooperatives, go into circles, go into groups, and approach buyers as groups. Yeah. There's power in the group. You can share the cost of legal to get your contract properly signed. Most of the buyers will shy away from that because they know that they're tight. But now what is this calling for? It's called what I call it again, moral obligation of the business leaders. I mean, as a business leader, you have to be ethical. You have to have a moral obligation to do the right thing all the times. And that is why you have to make sure that you're transparent with your negotiations with the farmers. You share with them your cost points. You share with them your what I call the technical specification, so that it's clear from the word go, so there are no gray areas. Sometimes farmers make losses because there are gray areas. They tell you, oh, but I wanted 15 centimeter bean, but they didn't say they want 15 centimeter bean. And maybe the reason is because sometimes the market is crashed. So they're looking for a way of sending you back with your beans. So that transparency and accountability is critical. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. If there are any questions that were not answered, please, we have 2 days. We can also find the speakers during the break and all that and see whether we can get our questions answered. But please, a round of applause for our speakers, for Dr. Lan Lee, Dr. Okumo, and Eunice Mwongera. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your insights. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Very helpful, very engaging, very insightful. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let us take a 10-minute break. Let's stretch our legs a little bit. We can grab a cup of tea, but let's be back in 10 minutes so that we go to the next session because we're running just a little bit behind schedule. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Fantastic.